Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being slowly murdered, not with a knife, not with poison, but with words that cut deeper than steel, with silence that suffocates dreams, with love that strangles the soul. They're being killed by manipulation so subtle, so perfectly crafted, that they're thanking their murderer while they bleed. Maybe that someone is you. I'm about to show you something that will make your skin crawl and your spirit soar simultaneously. You're about to discover that every "I love you" that came with conditions, every "help me" that drained your soul, every "you're so special" that made you feel trapped, they were all weapons in a war you didn't even know you were fighting. Marcus Aurelius stood in the Roman Colosseum, watching gladiators tear each other apart for the entertainment of the masses. But he wrote in his journal, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." He understood something that will save your life today. The deadliest battles aren't fought with swords. They're fought in the arena of your mind, and most people don't even realize they're bleeding. Picture this. You're in a room with no windows, no doors, but somehow you got in. You can't remember how. Every time you try to leave, someone you love appears crying, begging you to stay just a little longer. Days turn to months, months turn to years, and one day you realize the terrifying truth. You've been free to leave the entire time. The prison was built from your own compassion, your own guilt, your own desperate need to be needed. That room is real. You might be sitting in it right now, and I'm about to hand you dynamite to blow the walls to pieces. But here's what I need from you warriors in this army of the awakened. If you've ever felt like a puppet dancing to someone else's strings, smash that like button, like it's the face of everyone who ever made you doubt your worth. Drop a comment with one word, just one, that describes the moment you realized you were being played. Share this with someone whose strings are still being pulled. Subscribe, because we're not just building a channel, we're building a revolution against the puppet masters of this world. And whatever you do, don't you dare skip even 1 second of this video. Each revelation builds on the last, and by the end, you'll have the power to walk through fire without getting burned. Drop this nuclear affirmation in the comments. I cut my own strings and dance to my own rhythm. Let's burn this psychological prison to the ground. Now let's dive in. They don't have fangs. They don't sleep in coffins. They don't fear crosses or garlic, but they are vampires, feeding on something far more precious than blood. They feast on your life force, your dreams, your very essence, leaving you a walking corpse who still believes they're alive. These psychological vampires have perfected the art of emotional hemophilia. They make you bleed your energy, your time, your sanity, and they convince you that bleeding is love, that suffering is loyalty, that dying a slow death is what good people do. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by the most sophisticated manipulators in human history, senators who could smile while sliding daggers between ribs, advisors who spoke poetry while planning murder, wrote these words that will save your life. Confine yourself to the present. Not their manufactured crisis, not their emotional terrorism, your present moment, your choice, your power. Listen to me very carefully. Right now, think of that person who calls only when they need something. When they text, your stomach drops like you're falling off a cliff. When you see their name, your heart races, not with love, but with dread. That's not anxiety. That's your soul screaming a warning you've been trained to ignore. I want you to remember the last time they needed you. Notice how it always happens when you're finally happy, finally at peace, finally focusing on your own life. That's not coincidence. That's predatory instinct. They can smell your joy from miles away, and it triggers their feeding frenzy. They turn your greatest strength, your compassion, into a weapon pointed at your own heart. They make you believe that caring means sacrificing everything, that love means letting them devour you one piece at a time until nothing remains but the hollow shell of who you used to be. But here's your first weapon in this war for your soul. Your emotional energy is not a renewable resource that exists for everyone else's consumption. It's sacred fuel for your life, your dreams, your purpose. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The verdict echoes through your mind every time you dare to choose yourself, every time you say no, every time you draw a line in the sand. The guilt. Guillotine falls, severing another piece of your freedom, your self-respect, your right to exist without their approval. But here's the blood-chilling truth they don't want you to know. You were never on trial. There was never any crime. The courtroom is a hallucination they painted in your mind, and you've been the judge, jury, and executioner of your own liberation. Marcus Aurelius faced the ultimate guilt trip, an entire empire expecting him to sacrifice his life, his happiness, his very soul for their needs. Yet he wrote these words that will shatter their spell. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? Replace anger with guilt, and you'll understand. The destruction guilt causes in your life far exceeds whatever imaginary crime they're prosecuting you for. Picture the last time someone made you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Remember how the guilt felt like acid in your veins, burning away your resolve. Remember how you apologized for having needs, for existing, for daring to matter in your own life. That wasn't your conscience speaking. That was their programming running its malicious code in your mind. They keep a twisted ledger of every favor, every kindness, every moment of help. But notice something terrifying. They have amnesia about everything you've done. They remember their generosity with photographic detail, but forget your sacrifices like they never happened. The guilt is always a one-way street leading straight to your destruction. But I'm about to give you a sword that cuts through guilt like light through darkness. Real guilt serves your growth. False guilt serves someone else's control. If the guilt doesn't make you a better person, it's just another form of psychological terrorism designed to keep you in chains. Welcome to the most elite assassination organization in existence, one that doesn't kill bodies, but murders reality itself. Their weapon of choice? Your own mind turned against you. Their mission? To make you question everything you know to be true until you become a ghost haunting your own life. They call it gaslighting, but that name is far too gentle for what they do. This is psychological warfare conducted with the precision of a brain surgeon and the cruelty of a serial killer. They don't just lie to you. They perform surgery on your memories, your perceptions, your grip on reality itself. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by courtiers who could rewrite history with a smile, anchored himself to this truth that will save your sanity. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is perspective, not truth. But he meant external interpretations, never your own lived experience. Your reality is the one sacred thing no one has the right to edit. I want you to imagine something that will make your blood run cold. You start keeping a secret diary because you can no longer trust your own memory. You write down conversations word for word because someone has convinced you that your recollection is always wrong. You begin to fear your own mind like it's your enemy. That's not paranoia, that's survival. When someone systematically attacks your connection to reality, documenting the truth becomes an act of rebellion. But here's what's even more sinister. They make you doubt the evidence of your own senses while trusting their version of events completely. Listen to me like your life depends on it. Because it does. Your lived experience is not up for debate. Your feelings are not subject to their approval. Your memories are not rough drafts they get to edit. When someone has to convince you that your reality is wrong, they're committing psychological murder. You are the author of your own story. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. Going once, going twice, sold. Your compassion just purchased a lifetime of servitude to the highest bidder. Welcome to the soul auction house, where your kindness isn't appreciated, it's weaponized, where every act of love becomes ammunition in their war against your freedom, where they don't just take your help, they buy your entire existence on an installment plan written in your own tears. You signed contracts you never read, agreed to terms that weren't disclosed, entered into agreements where the fine print was written in a language you don't speak, the ancient dialect of emotional terrorism. Every thank you was actually, you owe me forever. Every I appreciate you was code for, I own a piece of your soul now. They've convinced you that love is transactional, that relationships operate on a point system, that every moment of care creates an obligation that compounds daily like predatory interest. But here's the soul-crushing truth. Their ledger is written in disappearing ink when it comes to your contributions. Marcus Aurelius, who could have demanded tribute from every corner of the known world, understood something that will shatter their economic terrorism. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When someone turns generosity into a weapon, the answer isn't to become transactional. It's to recognize the difference between a gift and an investment with your soul as collateral. Think about that person who remembers every dollar they spent on you, every favor they did, every time they helped, but has complete amnesia about your sacrifices. They keep a detailed inventory of their generosity, but treat your kindness like it's invisible, worthless, expected. That dinner they paid for 6 months ago? It wasn't generosity. It was an investment in your compliance. That help they gave you when you were struggling? It wasn't love. It was purchasing your silence about their behavior. That support during your darkest hour. It wasn't compassion. It was buying a lifetime subscription to your guilt. But here's your sword to cut through their chains. Real love gives without keeping score. Authentic generosity doesn't come with a payment plan. True kindness doesn't require you to mortgage your boundaries. When someone's help comes with strings attached, it's not help. It's a trap disguised as charity. Tonight's performance, The Marionette Massacre, a never-ending opera where the puppets believe they're real people, where the strings are invisible until you try to leave, where the audience pays admission with their sanity and stays until their souls are hollow shells echoing with someone else's script. The curtain never falls because the show must go on and on and on. Magnificent performance tonight. The lead puppet, that's you, has mastered the art of believing their own performance. Watch as they convince themselves they're choosing to comfort, to rescue, to suffer. Notice how they never see the strings attached to their wrists, their heart, their very soul. The puppet doesn't know it's made of wood until someone lights a match. Round and round the wooden actors spin. Today you're the savior with a painted smile carved into your face. Tomorrow the victim with tears that never dry. Next week the villain with fangs that grow from your own guilt. The strings cut into your skin, but you've forgotten what it feels like to move without them. Marcus Aurelius, forced to watch gladiatorial games where humans destroyed each other for entertainment, wrote, "Whenever you want to cheer yourself, consider the good qualities of your companions. But what happens when your companion keeps changing faces like a shapeshifter in your nightmares? Here's the mind-shattering revelation that will splinter your reality. You're not watching the performance. You are the performance. Every emotional crisis, every rescue mission, every moment of manufactured chaos, it's all choreographed theater with your authentic self, buried beneath layers of wooden masks. They've made you addicted to the dance because while you're spinning on their stage, you forget the most soul-destroying question. Why does this person's existence require a constant audience? Why must there always be drama? Why do their problems reproduce like cancer every time you solve one? Because they're not seeking healing, they're seeking worship. They don't want solutions, they want spectators. Your compassion isn't medicine, it's applause for their one-person tragedy show. Cut your own strings, burn the script. Walk off their stage and into the blinding light of your own unrehearsed, uncontrolled, magnificently messy, authentic life. Patient exhibits dangerous levels of inner peace. Code red. We need immediate intervention before this epidemic of calmness spreads. Nurse, prepare the emergency injection of manufactured crisis. Scalpel ready. We're about to perform an urgency transplant, removing all traces of serenity and replacing them with a constant state of panic that will keep the patient dependent on our facility for life. Fascinating case studies from our experimental wing. Subjects who were once calm now experience withdrawal symptoms when not in crisis mode. Their bodies have developed immunity to peace. They can only function in states of manufactured emergency. Side effects include chronic anxiety, inability to prioritize their own needs, and severe allergic reactions to boundaries. The most terrifying part? You've been a patient in this hospital your entire life, and you never realized you weren't sick. You were being systematically poisoned with injections of artificial emergency until you forgot what healthy feels like. Marcus Aurelius, managing the collapse and resurrection of an empire daily, discovered the ultimate truth about real versus manufactured urgency. Confine yourself to the present, not their artificial timeline of terror, not their countdown to imaginary catastrophe, but the actual, observable reality of what truly requires immediate action. Listen carefully to the sound of manufactured urgency. It's always accompanied by emotional manipulation. If you don't help me right now, time is running out. This is your last chance. Real emergencies don't need a sales pitch. Genuine crises speak for themselves. Here's what will make your skin crawl. Notice how their emergencies always happen when you're doing well, when you're happy, when you're focused on your goals, when you're finally at peace. That's when their crisis alarm sounds. Your success is their emergency. Your joy is their natural disaster. They've programmed you to be an emergency responder in the disaster zone of their poor planning, their emotional chaos, their inability to handle basic adult responsibilities. But you're not a paramedic for their psychological car crashes. Rip out the IV tubes. Escape the operating table. Your peace is not a disease that needs curing. It's medicine they've been stealing from you. When someone has to convince you something is urgent, it's usually just important to them. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Miss Inadequacy pageant, where every contestant is guaranteed to lose, where the crown belongs to a phantom who doesn't exist, and where the talent portion involves destroying your own self-worth with surgical precision. Tonight's competition: who can hate themselves the most convincingly while smiling for the cameras? Impressive performance in the self-destruction category. Watch as contestant number U compares themselves to the legendary everyone else, a competitor so perfect they've never been seen, but somehow always wins. Notice how they voluntarily lower their own score every time someone mentions how Sarah never complains, how the ex was so understanding, how normal people handle things so much better. Everyone else would do this for me. Your friend Sarah never complains. Other people don't make such a big deal. Every word is a judge's gavel slamming down your score. Every comparison, a spotlight burning through your confidence. They've entered you in a beauty contest where the only prize is learning to hate your own reflection. Marcus Aurelius, literally watching gladiators die for the entertainment of crowds who didn't know their names, wrote these words that will end this psychological blood sport forever. How much trouble he avoids, who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself. Your worth is not determined by comparison rankings in someone else's twisted Olympics of manipulation. Here's what will make your blood boil with righteous fury: the people they compare you to. Half of them don't exist. The other half have horror stories about this same manipulator. That perfect ex who never complained? They described you the same way to them. That understanding friend who would never question them? That friend probably has them blocked on every platform. Tear off the sash, smash the crown, walk off the stage. You are not a contestant in their competition of manufactured inadequacy. Your worth doesn't need a panel of phantom judges to validate its existence. Behold the ultimate narcotic empire, where love isn't felt, it's manufactured in industrial quantities, where affection is processed into concentrated addiction, where they don't deal cocaine or heroin. They deal something far more dangerous: synthetic worship that hijacks your brain's reward system and turns you into a junkie, begging for your next fix of artificial adoration. Clinical trials show unprecedented results. Our new formula creates instant emotional dependency with just one dose of "you're not like anyone I've ever met." Side effects include complete personality dissolution, chronic people-pleasing, and severe allergic reactions to your own boundaries. Warning: prolonged exposure causes patients to mistake manipulation for love and toxicity for passion. This is love bombing, psychological warfare disguised as romance, manipulation wearing the mask of adoration, emotional terrorism delivered through compliments so perfect they feel like prophecy. But here's the blood-chilling truth: you're not being loved, you're being studied, catalogued, and then systematically addicted to a drug they control. Marcus Aurelius, drowning daily in the artificial praise of courtiers who would kiss his feet while planning his assassination, anchored himself to this life-saving truth: everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. When someone's love for you depends on your usefulness to them, it's not love. It's a business transaction disguised as worship. Here's what will make your soul shiver. They don't praise your strength, they praise your compliance. They don't celebrate your independence, they worship your dependence. They don't love your boundaries, They adore your willingness to dissolve them. You're not being loved for who you are. You're being rewarded for who you're willing to become. Real love grows like a tree, slowly, steadily, with deep roots and seasonal changes. Love bombing explodes like a firework, brilliant, overwhelming, and then it leaves you in darkness, wondering if the light was ever real. When someone's affection feels too good to be true, too perfect, too exactly what you've always needed to hear, trust that feeling. Your intuition isn't paranoia, it's your survival instinct detecting emotional poison disguised as champagne. You came here as a victim. You leave as a warrior. You entered as someone else's puppet. You exit as the master of your own strings. The transformation is complete, but the war for your soul never ends. Marcus Aurelius faced manipulators who could command armies, control nations, rewrite history itself. Yet he conquered them all with this final devastating truth. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your mind is a fortress that no manipulation can breach once you become its true guardian. Will they test your new armor? Yes. Will some relationships burn when you stop being controllable? Absolutely. Will there be moments when you question if standing in your power is worth the loneliness? Without doubt. But what you've gained today, your sovereignty, your sanity, your sacred right to exist unmanipulated, is worth more than all the toxic connections you'll incinerate. Smash that like button like you're breaking the chains of every person who ever tried to control you. Share your moment of awakening in the comments. Share this with every soul still trapped in someone else's psychological prison. Subscribe, because this army of the awakened is just getting started. You are not anyone's puppet. You never were. You never will be again.